You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
I'm Chris Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com. There you go, ladies. Welcome to the big show. We certainly appreciate it. As always, the Chris Voss Show is a family that loves you but doesn't judge you, at least not as harshly as your mother-in-law. She wanted her to marry Bob, and she's disappointed you forever. But you'll get over it. Refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss1 on the TikTok and all those crazy places on the internet. As always, we have the most amazing minds and speakers on the show. Today, we are joined by a young man who's going to be talking to us about trauma, breath work, and all sorts of different stuff. We have Elijah Nisenboim on the show with us today. We're going to be talking about his amazing book, The Trauma Code, Unlock the Hidden Map to Your Life's True Purpose, out July 22, 2024. And we're going to be talking about everything that goes into that book and what it's about and how it does it. You're going to be just smarter when he's done. He is the founder of Effigy Breath, sharing his work with tens of thousands of people for over 30 years. He has a unique method for guiding people using effigy breathwork and sacred Taoist movement to reveal the trauma code that unlocks the map to one life's purpose. He has composed and created and recorded 18 volumes of music created specially for his company, and 6 volumes specifically related to the 6 stages of effigy breath, which can be found on all streaming services. He's the author of 3 books: The Trauma Code, Uncover Your Hidden Map to Your Life's True Purpose, A Liberated Life, and is in the process of freeing your mind with his books and everything else. Actually, let me get that title right. It's A Liberated Life, Effigy Breathwork, and Process of Freeing Your Mind, out on 2021. And what are your ruts? Making the unconscious conscious. Welcome to the show, Elijah. How are you?
Good. Nice to be here. I'm a fan of your show.
Thank you. We're glad to have you as well. Give us your .coms. Where do you want people to find you on the interwebs?
Effigy Breath, EFFIJI breath.com. So that's the website. And then Instagram, Facebook, if you just look for Effigy Breath, they're there.
So Give us a 30,000 overview of what's inside your new book.
You know, it's interesting. Just before we started, we were talking about music. I grew up in Canada. I was in the music business. And just before I used to play piano, and the piano teachers used to hit my hands with a ruler. And when I went out to be a musician, a songwriter with a band, I would always just kind of freeze up and my hands would get cold. I was playing in this rock and roll piano bar, and I went next door to get massage. I found this place and I befriended the woman, and she and her husband were moving to California. And she said, if you help me put stuff in storage, I'll give you massage, which as a broke musician, I was like, sure. And she said, well, you try my husband's breath work. And this was 1990. And I sounded like work, so I didn't really want to do it, but I did. And it was the most excruciating, terrifying, profound, enlightening experience. It just completely changed me that day. And my hands had with so much pain when I was doing the breath work. He moved off to California and I followed him out here, trained, and then eventually sort of ran his business. So breath work back then in 1990, there was no alternative anything, really. And now breathwork is a pretty normal mainstream word, breath and work. It's just the conscious use of your breath. But over these 35 years, what I realized is that the reason why people suffer in any way is because of trauma, which are just basically the unresolved events of the past. And I realized sort of 2 things. One is that the trauma is a problem in that there's the adverse effects of it, all the things that we suffer from because of it. And breathwork can really release that. But I also realized in talking to people that trauma also has a value. It's not just garbage to be getting rid of. It's that we experience these things to learn lessons that are part of our mandate here, like why we're here. So the trauma code is really being able to release the energy of trauma and find the value of those experiences, learn those lessons so that you can fulfill what you've come for. So that's the essence of my work.
You know, it's interesting how trauma shapes us and influences us. You may want to turn yourself down. It influences us and shapes us. I mean, it can shape a lifetime. Like you can see trauma's path dragging behind you, after 50 years. Yeah. But it's interesting how it shapes us. And like on one hand, you look at it and go, I really wish that had never happened. On the other hand, you kind of go, it's kind of what shaped me into being me and being a survivor and giving me the skills that I need to kind of get through life.
And the motivation to seek certain things because of it.
Yeah. And it's interesting. It's like I grew up in a cult, a repressive cult.
You did?
And and the impact that it had, really shaped my life. And as an entrepreneur, learning to ask hard questions about what is this bullshit you're feeding me, and analyzing people's character and life. Yeah, it really has helped me shape, and I think I'm a better business person for it. Would I have liked to not gone through that trauma of having religion forcibly shoved up my ass? No, but in the end, it's been really interesting to see how that has shaped me, and it's almost kind of like an indelible mark that I often wonder what sort of different person I'd be without it. So it's kind of interesting, the yin and yang of that.
I think first of all, thank you for sharing that, because this is in some ways, I've been in the alternative health healing space for years, and there's always this idea that it's for special people or spiritual people or people who've studied things, but really the human experience is kind of all the same, and you're just sharing the essence of what this is really about, which is if you only see these terrible things that have happened to you as you being a victim of them, then it's just garbage. There's nothing. You're a victim of this. But if you are able to create value from that, learn from that, it makes your whole life meaningful, because the path that you pursue, as I said, it sort of becomes compost in your garden. And at the end of the day, like whatever your technique for getting there, like we all are trying to be. I think when you're born, you have an original blueprint, and that gets changed because of trauma. And let's not just say trauma and conditioning. You grew up in a cult. I mean, cult and culture are the same word, but the whole society is a cult, as we know, and even in the times we're in right now, where people just are deeply questioning, like, oh, am I supposed to trust the government or the doctors or school or whatever? And really, at our best, we should be autonomous individuals with agency, like seeking to be who we're meant to be. But cult is basically what you do to fit into the tribe and to belong. And there's so much personal and collective trauma like that. But I think what's beautiful is here you have this show, and you're sharing something that's come out of the roots of your own life. And really, you're an example. What I'm saying is unlocking the trauma code, is that you've taken something difficult and used it as your power to be who you are out in the world. And that's what my book is about. But it's really, the book is short, it's only 100 pages, but it's what my work is about. And the breath work is sort of the one way I help people get there. Yeah.
Now, you talk about the trauma code. Well, what is this map? Can you give us some details on what the mapping is about?
Simply, I mean, we're made up of all kinds of different parts. So I want to speak in the most general way, because after 35 years of working with people, I do understand quite a bit about the unseen world. But if we just take mind and emotion, that's unseen, but it does reflect in how we behave and how we look and all that. So we have, I think each person has a unique configuration, a design, and there's a map that goes with it. So like an acorn that already has an oak tree in it at birth. So being able to unlock the map is kind of like my phone. If I want to swipe it to open it, right? But what is the code that opens it? But the thing about trauma is the nature of our human, our dealing with trauma. Let me back up and say there's big traumas and there's little traumas. Not every trauma is like abuse, tragedy, and growing up in a cult. But it's that you couldn't process it. So the energy of who you are gets stuck and held until it can be released. But it goes into what we call the unconscious, which is, the word just means without awareness, unconscious. So why does it go there? Because some part of you is protecting yourself so that you don't re-experience the pain of that trauma. So we have these things, these programs and these patterns that make it very hard to get to that energy, to unlock it. And we just end up in the repeating pattern of replaying the unconscious, replaying those traumas. So to unlock the map is to get past the guard at the gate, the thing that says, oh, we don't want to experience this because it's going to be painful. But the problem is your life force is locked up in, when you're told this is how God works, this is how the universe works. I'm just talking about being in a cult. Like you know it's bullshit, but some part of you is going to have some fear about acting out, particularly if you're a child. So as you get older, how do you get around the parts of yourself that have suffered the adverse effects? And some of that is repression. Some of that is, rage and abandonment, physical health issues. Like the body, our whole map of who we are is tied up in this. Mm-hmm. If you can release the energy, the potential of who you are can be manifest.
And and it sounds like you espouse this belief. There's a book out called The Body Holds the Score. And we've had numerous people like yourself, psychologists and PhD people on the show that, we talked about how the body will hold emotion and trauma and different things. Do you believe in that?
Yeah. Two thoughts here. One is, maybe we could just do like you and I, as long as we have a disclaimer for the people here. Like we'll do 20 breaths together, and we can talk a bit about that, just to show you how quickly we can experience what I'm about to say, which is the body is a physical manifestation of the mind, of this and of the spirit. Mm-hmm. And the mind is a metaphysical manifestation of the body. So whatever happens within us internally shows up in the way that it shows up in our body. And what I said at the beginning, like I had the piano teachers who were old biddies whacking my hands with the rulers. As soon as I started to do the breath work, I had like incredible pain in my hands. It's just memory. Mm-hmm. So the body keeping score is that, it's not terrible to have memory. It's just that the memory of trauma is like a configuration that's locked up in us, and that will show up in the way that our body is. Also, just how we eat and how we sit and how we move, like that also comes from these experiences. So that also is going to affect the health of our body.
Yeah. And is breathing a way to flush that trauma out of the muscles, to release the stuff that's in there?
Yeah. So the term breath work, just to demystify it, breath work. Mm-hmm. We have all of our internal organs cannot be manually operated except the lungs. You can't make your liver do something. Even your heart rate, if you want to slow your heart rate down, you have to go through your breathing. But
I just throw a bunch of vodka in that liver and it does stuff. No,
that's true, but could you do it without the vodka?
No, you're right. You couldn't individually, manually be like, do your job or else. So yeah.
I
Sometimes I hold
have
a gun up to my liver and just be like, "You better keep working."
yeah.
I don't know.
And your liver responds to vodka. I mean, the physical part of the body.
Yeah.
I mean, I say there are in my book. There's 4 minds, 4 levels of the mind. And the animal mind, which is the one you're talking about, like the liver has a relationship to vodka. It's just you can't really change that. And as a Russian Jew heritage, I do like vodka. By the way, just want to say I'm not against it, but
You're Russian,
the lungs can be manual or automatic. And to me, it's a metaphor, really, because, well, first of all, meaning you can breathe or you can just let the breath happen. But we are like animals. So if I don't tell you to breathe, you're going to keep breathing and stay alive. But that's to be unconscious. Animals can't change. But humans, we have choice. Our life is our choice. And really the breathing in, the breathing out, and the effect of the lungs is a metaphor. It's that we can choose our life or we can be unconscious like animals. We can go inside, we can go outside. We have life in and we have death. We have the seen world and the unseen world. So whenever you consciously choose to breathe, that's breath work. It's that basic. But the technique that Effigy, which is my brand, started in 2001, comes from a particular style that's about 5,000 years old from India, and it's mouth breathing. And would you be open to do 10 breaths with me?
Yeah, sure.
With our audience?
Let's do it.
Yeah. So all we're going to do is you're going to breathe, and it's very counterintuitive. So if anybody's thinking walk around all day and do this, and plus for waiver's sake, we're not advising you to go and do this on your own. We're just doing 10 breaths. So you're going to breathe in the center of the chest with your mouth open, about 2 fingers wide, and the focus will be on the inhale. Now, I don't know with our video, I know on Zoom, if I start breathing, it'll cut the mic off. But basically, we'll do 10 together. Focus on the inhale. Just breathe with me. Here we go.
Okay.
So I'll go. And then just let it go.
Okay.
And you close your eyes for 2 seconds. In effigy breath work, we breathe like this for 1 hour without stopping.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're laying on your back, but also you can feel a lot of, how does that feel?
I mean, it feels pretty good. I can breathe. I've been fighting to breathe since I had COVID. I'm all into that breath.
I have helped some people with long COVID with this. It's pretty instant because, your breath is life. It's the one thing you need to do to live. So this particular technique, it's not like a meditation breath work. It's not subtle. It's conscious hyperventilation. And we do it for an hour with no stopping. So as you can imagine, you're going to enter an altered state and you start feeling a lot of energy in the body, and it releases trauma.
That's, it's interesting how that works. I was watching another author recently on another podcast that was talking about, and and how this is kept in the muscles, and breathing also kind of changes some of our state too, right? Doesn't it?
100%.
Kind of help us focus and kind of live inside of ourselves, and kind of, there's so much external crap that we have going on, podcasts and TV and other things, phones,
attention
buzzing,
overload.
Attention overload. And a lot of people use a lot of these distractions to get away from themselves, to not have to face themselves, to not have to sit still, to not have to, know what's going on with yourself. And it keeps you from, saying, hey, what's going on with me, checking in, maybe addressing your traumas and other things, because so many people want distraction. But breathing is one way that can really help, do so.
If a person were who's watching our podcast right now, just while they're listening, closed their eyes and took a deep breath, there would be an immediate connection to the inner world, and that would balance in some way. And for most of us, most people live to the outside, and then they get controlled by that. And then on the inside, the mind is just racing. And breath, if you can master your breathing, particularly when you're upset or triggered or whatever, of course it's going to change your state. It's going to change how you listen. One of the things I say in my book, basically, that there's really two main effects of trauma breaking down. One is perception, that how you see things is filtered through the lens of trauma. So how you think and process data is affected. And then the other is that you become feeling avoidant. You don't want to feel feelings. So much of what people are under stress from is just the resistance to experience what they feel and see things separate. If you cut me off on the road or whatever, and I'm in a bad mood because my wife left me, of course my perception of that situation is going to be filtered by how I'm feeling. But whenever you go to your breath, your breathing, it completely changes. It connects you more to the greater matrix, the one that's not just so personal inside you, to your own experience. And when you have trauma, the tendency is to be very personal about everything that happens in the wrong way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's pretty interesting how all of it works. Tell us a little bit about you. How did you get into this sort of business? How did you grow up? What were some of your influences that shaped you?
Yeah, I'm 60. So I grew up in Canada, and I have garden variety trauma, meaning in some ways I feel like, but I knew as early as 3 or 4 that I was just like, I was a unicorn of some type. I just didn't quite get school. I had authoritarian parents. Those were super sensitive. My father had an affair. I wrote about that in A Liberated Life, but he carried that on all for about 7 years during a period of my life. But music, I knew as early as 3 or 4 I wanted to be a musician, and music's still a very big part of my life. But as I said, I was really negated, and I was very shy, and I was afraid to talk. My mother was kind of volatile. I just had this truth-telling way that she didn't like. So I kind of grew up afraid to express myself. And my trauma code, like yours in a way, is that I can sit here and freely express myself. Like she in a way gave me the lesson I needed to learn not to worry about being popular and just to say and be who I am. But that wasn't how I grew up. And as I said, I had the piano teachers who used to hit my hands and stuff like that. When I was a musician in Toronto in the 70s, we were talking about Rush. They were a little before me, but I was traveling in similar circles. I briefly knew their manager, but I couldn't really. There were 2 things going on. One was that I just couldn't play the game because I had all this fear about its self-expression, but also I was always into the transformational part of the relationship, how music was healing. And so I found myself focused sort of on the wrong things in the business, and I wasn't like a massive drug user. So when I discovered the breath work, it was sort of like doing drugs, and it was sort of giving me that liberation. And I thought when I experienced the breath work that I had gotten money actually to make an album, and my songwriting partner was born in the States. So we took our album and moved to San Francisco, and I thought I'll just do breath work while I try to get this record deal. Yeah. And then really my ability and my relationship with people doing healing work, just that became my life. I haven't done anything else. And I think that I have sort of 2 personal gifts, I guess, but they're things that I've developed over all these years. One is that I just can read very deeply into people's inner lives. And so when I discovered the breath work, I was just seeing out in the open the things that I could already see. So I had that. And the other is that I'm still sort of a sensitive little middle-class Jewish Canadian boy. Like I care about people. I connect. I'm a person who can connect, and I can put that with words. So anybody that I'm working with or come in contact with, that I use breath work and various other things in my system to just help people to unlock their trauma codes. I don't even know if I answered your question, did I?
Yeah. I mean, you told me about how you journeyed and how you got down here. It's an interesting how, like I said, the traumas and things that happen, how they shape us.
Yeah.
And then if you address them and fix them, you can learn a lot about you. But it's really important to get on this early in your life if you have it. Let's talk about some of the stuff you do at effigiebreath.com, your website, different offerings that you have. Tell us about some of the offerings that you have so that people can, look on your website and get to know you better.
I traveled nonstop from 2002 to 2002 to 2020, and then the pandemic hit, and I didn't leave my house for almost 5 years, and I just started going back out in person. I was actually in Canada 2 weeks ago in Kentucky. So I'm meeting people in person. I'm going to be in Boston this coming weekend. Mm-hmm. But to have a newsletter, I write 2-3 times a week. There's people can read the book to be educated. Sometimes we did online classes regularly up until several months ago. So sometimes there's online experiences for the breath work, and we do a 1-day trauma release immersion. And then if you come in person, there's live classes and workshops and facilitator training and personal development programs. And people can book a private session with me as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's so fun.
Yeah, lots going on. I mean, during the pandemic, I needed to stop and get an air fryer and a dog and stuff. And
a lot of people were doing that during the...
Yeah. It's funny. I was in a side note, it's part of my work we haven't spoken about, but I started studying internal martial arts in 1999. And I went to China in 2014 with my teacher, George Shu, who did a camp with many of the great living masters of internal martial arts, which come from Taoism. And I went back every 3 months for 5 years, studied Mandarin, studied with many masters. And part of what I use in my programs is movement to help retrain the body. But January 2020, I was in Chengdu, which is the next city over from Wuhan. And I got home and thought I was going to die and didn't really know what it was, but probably had COVID in January 2020. But that was the last time I had gone anywhere. But anyway, yeah.
So anything more we need to talk about in the offerings you have on your website? Tell us how people can reach out to you as we go out, how they can get to know you and ask more about your services.
There's a 5-minute video that we made this year that's guided, that they can do effigy breathwork and experience what that is. And I think it's on our website. It definitely probably on our YouTube channel. But we're not hard to find. I have a partner, Sarah Sharmoli. She's been with me for 12 years, so she's my co-teacher and holder of the vessel that we are. But I think we've pretty much covered it. Just reach out if you need something.
Reach out if you need something. It's been insightful to have you on the show. We've learned a lot, Elijah.
Thanks.
Give us the .com as we go out one last time.
Yeah. Effigy, EFFIJI, breath.com.
Thank you for coming on the show. We really appreciate it, Elijah.
Thanks, Chris. Nice to be here.
Pleasure to have you as well. Order up the book wherever fine books are sold, folks. The Trauma Code. Uncover the hidden map to your life's true purpose. And if you have trauma or feel you have trauma, look into it. Please get professional help. Don't buy crystals. Don't do that. I'm against crystals. But, you get professional help. But trauma is something that if you have it, please deal with it as early as you can. If there's anything I would tell my younger self as a child, go to fucking therapy. It would save me about 40 years of hell. Anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com, Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com, Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the TikTokity, and all those crazy places on the internet. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time. And that should have us out, man.